before we kind of talk about the nuts and bolts, when I met with Jamie, we kind of agreed that we would start out by talking about, kind of in general, what is the steward's role in FMLA? Because we don't oversee FMLA and we don't administer FMLA. So it's kind of like you want to be able to do so much, but then there's other people that should be carrying larger pieces of this, the experts, the ones that have to administer it. But it comes in a lot in the daily representational stuff we do. I mean, for the BAs, and I'm sure for the stewards, every time we see somebody faltering in performance, especially people who have been around for a long time, you know, one of the first questions we try to strategically ask them is, do you have any health issues? And nowadays, we are addressing a much bigger myriad of health issues in the workplace, I think. Because now we've got everything from adult ADA to some real mild forms of even autism or learning disabilities. But certainly for a lot of the regular chronic illnesses or accidents, you know, we find people having things like anxiety, attention deficit, again, those things that are causing them problems. So maybe we can later brainstorm a little bit about how to try and bring that up and get them to talk about it. But the other place that this comes in is, as a steward, I think all of us should at least know the internal process where we work. So if a member comes up to you and says, you know, I've got diabetes and, you know, I'm going to need some time off and I'm having trouble regulating it, or my son has asthma and I'm afraid I'm going to be missing so much time, or how do I do that family medical thing? You have the right, and we think the obligation, to know exactly how the process works in your agency, and therefore make sure it works without a hitch for our members. And I'll tell you something, even though FMLA is a law, and even though ADA is a law, the American Disabilities Act, you will find that a lot of people in upper management are very intimidated by this stuff. And all of a sudden, when you start talking medical issues, there's doors that open. You can talk about accommodations, you can talk about a leave, you can talk about some changes. So never be intimidated, but also never try to do the end game on FMLA. Because really what we want you to be able to do is say to somebody, here's how it works at revenue. Here's the person that you go to for the forms. Here's the confidentiality. Here's what you don't tell your supervisor. And here's where to find the information. And this is taken verbatim out of the Act. You'll see what kind of things initially fall under FMLA. And it's serious health condition. It means illness, injury, impairment, or physical or mental condition. And it does say mental. And again, we got a lot of that stuff that we start to identify in certain members that they really do need some help getting fixing some of those problems which lend itself to performance issues, which lend itself to being terminated. So inpatient care, when you're hospitalized for an overnight stay, that's automatically FMLA. And again, it's you, your kids, your spouse, or your dependent parents. And this is, the first one is something a lot of people forget, but it's a period of incapacity of more than 3 consecutive calendar days. So I think most of the agencies, if you've been gone more than 3 consecutive days, they will kick FMLA in. They will kick FMLA in automatically. The thing that FMLA does is protects you for using that time against you in discipline. So even though you're using sick time, paid sick day, you know that that doesn't necessarily protect you against discipline. But anything with FMLA on it, they cannot use to discipline you with. So that's another important part of it.
Can you use sick time and FMLA together?
Well, sick time, the agencies will make you exhaust your sick leave under FMLA. Vacation cannot be required. That you have the choice of using. If you ask, they should let you. I've never seen them not let you. Think of it this way. FMLA, again, is written as an unpaid act. That gives you 12 weeks in a year for certain reasons. The way you get paid is on top of that, and it comes from the contract or state law. The contract obviously gives you sick leave, the state gives your child sick leave, and then the contract extends sick leave for elder parents under certain circumstances. One of the most vulnerable things about FMLA that members tend to forget, you have to work 1,250 hours in the preceding year to have FMLA in your current year. Continuing treatment, it also talks about subsequent treatment relating to the same condition, treatment 2 or more times within 30 days, treatment by a healthcare provider on at least one occasion, which results in a regimen of continuing treatment. So there's the physical therapy that might come out of a car accident, follow up to a cancer illness, things like that. And pregnancy, I think everybody knows that's kind of a given. That is the time that you really do need to think about doing FMLA if you're not going to do it now. Because if you're gone intermittently with a chronic illness, it's not going to affect your health insurance per se, and it's not going to affect your job security, but it will drive your numbers up to the point where you'll start getting conversations about possible discipline because you're absenteeism. If you don't know your internal process for FMLA, it's a great thing to put on a meet and confer, or just to meet with HR. What's your process? What do people go through when they have an FMLA issue? You should know who the person is at your agency that handles the paperwork and who the employee is going to be working with. I think that's really helpful. As long as you're using paid time off, your insurance continues. The employer or the state is also able to request refreshed documentation for somebody that's on FMLA. And we have situations where they ask the employee like every week or every 2 weeks. The general rule of thumb is documentation needs to be refreshed every 3 months, or that's a reasonable amount of time that somebody can have their employer say to them, we'd like to have a refreshed set of documents from your doctor.